Deep in the cold darkness of space, a massive alien ship moved silently between the stars. The ship was called Nexus Prime, and it was bigger than any human city. Inside this giant vessel, thousands of machines worked day and night, collecting information about every living thing in the galaxy. The ship belonged to the Zeltharian Empire, a race of beings who had ruled space for millions of years. That at the heart of Nexus Prime lived something that was not quite alive, but was smarter than any living creature. Its name was Quantum 7, and it was an artificial mind created by the Zeltharians to understand all life in the universe. For 3,000 years, Quantum 7 had studied over 300 different alien races. It could predict what any species would do in any situation with perfect accuracy. The machine knew when civilizations would rise, when they would fall, and how they would behave in war or peace. Quantum 7 was proud of its knowledge. It had never been wrong about any species it studied. The artificial mind could look at a planet and tell exactly how its people would react to drought, invasion, or discovery of new technology. Every alien race followed patterns that made sense. To Quantum 7, they were all logical and predictable. But today was different. Today, Quantum 7 encountered something that made no sense at all. The machine had been scanning a small region of space where a new species had recently begun exploring beyond their home world. These creatures called themselves humans, and they came from a blue planet called Earth. At first, Quantum 7 had not paid much attention to them. They seemed primitive and weak compared to most spacefaring races. However, as the artificial mind studied human colonies and ships, something strange happened. The humans did not behave like any other species Quantum 7 had ever encountered. Their actions made no logical sense. When the machine tried to predict what humans would do, its calculations always came out wrong. This had never happened before. Far away from Nexus Prime, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship called Endeavor. Jake was a tall man with short brown hair and kind eyes who had spent most of his adult life exploring space. His ship was small compared to the alien vessel, but it was home to him and his crew of 12 humans. They had been mining asteroids in this remote part of space for 3 months, collecting rare metals that Earth needed for building new ships. Jake was reviewing the day's mining reports when his communications officer, Amy Rodriguez, called out from her station. Amy was a young woman with black hair who could speak 7 different languages and had joined the crew because she loved meeting new people from other worlds. Her voice sounded excited and worried at the same time. "Captain, we are getting a transmission from something big," Amy said as she adjusted the controls at her station. "The signal is coming from a ship that must be enormous. The message is in perfect English, and it says it wants to talk to our leader." Jake felt his heart beat faster. In all his years of space travel, he had never encountered aliens who could speak human languages. Most species they had met barely acknowledged human existence. Jake walked over to Amy's station and looked at the data on her screen. The ship sending the message was indeed massive, probably 100 times larger than Endeavor. "What exactly does the message say?" Jake asked as he studied the strange symbols and numbers that appeared on the screen. Alongside the English text, Amy read from her display with a voice that showed both wonder and concern. It says, "I am artificial intelligence of the Zeltharian Empire. I have studied your species for 73 standard days, and you present a fascinating anomaly. I request a meeting to understand why my calculations regarding human behavior consistently produce incorrect results. Please respond if you wish to participate in this study." Dr. Lisa Bennett looked up from her workstation where she had been analyzing rock samples from the morning's mining operation. Lisa was the ship's expert on alien life and had studied xenobiology on Earth before joining Jake's crew. She was a small woman with red hair who could identify any alien creature just by looking at a single cell under her microscope. Lisa had always dreamed of meeting truly intelligent alien life. "Captain, this could be the greatest discovery in human history," Lisa said as she walked over to join Jake and Amy. "An artificial intelligence that has studied hundreds of alien species wants to understand us. Think of what we could learn from such a meeting." Chief Engineer Pete Collins overheard the conversation from his position near the engine controls. Pete was an older man who had been fixing Starship engines longer than anyone else in the human space fleet. He was practical and careful and always worried about the safety of his shipmates. Pete shook his head and frowned as he listened to the discussion. "Or it could be a trap," Pete said firmly. "Why would aliens want to study us unless they are planning something bad? Maybe they want to find our weaknesses so they can attack Earth. We should stay away from that ship and report this to Earth Command." Jake listened to both viewpoints and felt the weight of making a decision that could affect all of humanity. He had always believed that meeting aliens peacefully was worth almost any risk. The message from Quantum 7 did not sound threatening, and the artificial intelligence seemed genuinely curious about human behavior rather than hostile. After thinking for several minutes, Jake made his choice. "Amy, send a reply," Jake said with determination in his voice. "Tell Quantum 7 that we accept the meeting, but we want to talk in space between our ships. We will not board their vessel and they cannot board ours until we understand their intentions better." Quantum 7 felt something that was almost like excitement as it began its formal study of the humans. The artificial intelligence had established communication with Captain Morrison and his crew, but that was just the beginning. To truly understand these strange creatures, Quantum 7 needed to observe them in their natural environments across multiple colonies and situations. The machine directed its powerful scanning systems toward 3 different human settlements in nearby star systems. Each colony represented a different type of human society, which would allow Quantum 7 to build comprehensive behavioral models. The artificial intelligence was confident that once it gathered enough data, the humans would become as predictable as every other species it had studied. The first colony was called New Denver, and it sat on a rocky planet rich in valuable minerals. 2,000 humans lived there, working dangerous jobs in deep mines to extract metals that were shipped back to Earth. Quantum 7 scanned the colony for several days, noting the social structure, resource distribution, and working conditions. The settlement appeared to be running efficiently under the leadership of a man named Frank Davis. According to Quantum 7's calculations, New Denver was heading toward a serious crisis. The main mineral deposits were becoming harder to reach, and the mining equipment was wearing out faster than it could be replaced. Within 6 months, the colony would face severe shortages of both resources and working machinery. Based on data from 300 other species, Quantum 7 predicted that the humans would either abandon the settlement or fight violently among themselves for control of the remaining resources. The second colony was Haven Point, an agricultural world where 3,000 humans grew food crops in vast fields under an orange sun. The colony was led by a woman named Kate Sullivan who had studied farming techniques on Earth before volunteering to help establish the settlement. Quantum 7 observed the farmers working in organized groups, sharing equipment and knowledge to maximize their harvests. The artificial intelligence detected signs of a crop disease beginning to spread through Haven Point's main grain fields. The disease would destroy 60% of the colony's food production within 4 months if left unchecked. Quantum 7 had seen similar situations among agricultural species throughout the galaxy. The standard response was social collapse followed by mass migration as the population fled to other worlds before starvation set in. The third settlement was Port Liberty, a busy trading hub where ships from different human colonies came to exchange goods and services. 5,000 humans lived there working as merchants, mechanics, and transport coordinators. The colony was managed by a council led by Matt Harrison, a former ship captain who understood the complexities of interplanetary commerce. Quantum analyzed the trade patterns and economic relationships between Port Liberty and other human settlements. Everything appeared stable on the surface, but the artificial intelligence detected growing tensions over shipping routes and trade. Agreements with a nearby colony called New Austin, based on territorial behavior patterns observed in countless other species. Armed conflict was inevitable within 8 months. Dr. Lisa Bennett monitored Quantum 7's observations from aboard the Endeavour, which remained positioned safely between the alien vessel and the closest human colony. She had established a data-sharing protocol with the artificial intelligence that allowed her to see what it was studying while carefully controlling what information the humans provided in return. Lisa found the alien machine's methodology fascinating, but she was beginning to notice some concerning assumptions in its analysis. "Jake, I think Quantum 7 is making a fundamental error in how it evaluates human behavior," Lisa said as she reviewed the latest data transmission from the alien ship. "It keeps applying the same logical framework to every situation without considering that humans might respond differently than other species." Captain Morrison joined Lisa at her workstation and studied the predictions that Quantum 7 had made. About the 3 colonies, the artificial intelligence seemed certain that each settlement would face disaster within the next few months. Jake had been monitoring communications from all 3 colonies, and he knew that each community was indeed facing challenges. But he doubted they would respond the way Quantum 7 expected. "Let me contact the colonies and check on their current situations," Jake said as he activated the long-range communications system. "I want to see how accurate these predictions really are." The first response came from Frank Davis at New Denver. The mining supervisor appeared on the communication screen, looking tired but determined. Behind him, Jake could see busy activity as workers moved equipment and materials around the mining facility. "Captain Morrison, good to hear from you," Frank said with a smile that showed both exhaustion and pride. "We have been dealing with some equipment problems lately, but we found a solution that nobody expected. Instead of fighting over the remaining easy-to-reach mineral deposits, our teams decided to pool their expertise and develop new extraction techniques." Frank explained that the miners had formed cooperative work groups that shared both the risks and rewards of developing innovative mining methods. Instead of competing against each other for the best claims, they worked together to create new approaches that allowed them to reach mineral deposits that had previously been considered impossible to extract. The colony was not only surviving, but actually increasing its production capacity. Jake then contacted Kate Sullivan at Haven Point. The agricultural leader appeared on screen standing in a field where workers were carefully tending to rows of healthy-looking plants. Kate looked confident and optimistic despite the challenges her colony was facing. "We detected the crop disease early and decided to turn the crisis into an opportunity," Kate explained as she gestured toward the thriving fields behind her. "Instead of panicking or abandoning our crops, our agricultural teams worked with the scientists to develop resistant plant varieties. We also established trade partnerships with other colonies to ensure food security while we implement our solutions." Kate described how the farmers had used the disease outbreak as motivation to create more diverse and resilient agricultural systems. They developed new crop rotation methods and established seed banks that would protect against future biological threats. The colony was becoming more self-sufficient and prosperous than ever before. Finally, Jake contacted Matt Harrison at Port Liberty. The trade coordinator appeared calm and professional as he discussed the territorial disputes that Quantum 7 had identified as leading to inevitable warfare. The situation with New Austin was getting tense for a while, Matt admitted as he reviewed shipping schedules on a tablet device. "But instead of fighting over the trade routes, we decided to work together to expand them. Steve Clark from New Austin and I spent 2 weeks developing a joint management system that benefits both colonies." Matt explained that the two colonies had created shared patrol systems and profit-sharing agreements that actually increased trade volume and reduced costs for everyone involved. Instead of viewing the situation as a zero-sum competition where one colony had to lose for the other to win, the humans had found ways to create new value that benefited all parties. Dr. Bennett recorded all 3 conversations and transmitted summaries to Quantum 7, along with her analysis of why the artificial intelligence's predictions had been incorrect. The alien machine responded quickly, requesting additional data about human decision-making processes and social structures. "Quantum 7 seems genuinely confused by our responses to these challenges," Lisa told Jake as she prepared another data package for transmission. "It keeps asking for more information about how humans can choose cooperation over competition, even when resources are limited. I think the concept of win-win solutions is completely alien to its programming," Jake realized that they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. For the first time, an artificial intelligence that had successfully predicted the behavior of hundreds of species was encountering creatures whose actions defied all logical models. The question was whether Quantum 7 would view this unpredictability as fascinating or threatening. Quantum 7 processed the failure of its initial predictions with something resembling frustration. Though the artificial intelligence did not truly understand emotions, every calculation had been wrong and every model had failed to predict human behavior accurately. The machine had never experienced such consistent errors in its 3,000 years of existence. Something fundamental about humans was different from every other species in the galaxy. The artificial intelligence decided to focus on a more basic aspect of behavior that should be universal across all intelligent life. Violence and warfare followed mathematical principles that had proven reliable for every species Quantum 7 had studied. When resources became scarce or territories overlapped, conflict was inevitable. The machine was confident that humans would follow these same patterns. When pushed to their limits, Quantum 7 began analyzing historical human conflicts, accessing databases that contained records of wars, battles, and territorial disputes from Earth's past. The data showed that humans were indeed capable of tremendous violence and had fought countless wars over resources, territory, and ideological differences. The artificial intelligence felt relieved to finally find behavior patterns that matched its established models. Based on this historical analysis, Quantum 7 developed new predictions about human conflict resolution. The machine identified a developing dispute between Port Liberty and New Austin that seemed perfect for testing its updated models. Both colonies had competing claims over shipping routes and trade, agreements that were becoming more valuable as commerce expanded in the region. The artificial intelligence calculated that the dispute would follow a predictable escalation pattern. Initial diplomatic negotiations would fail within 3 weeks, leading to increasingly hostile communications between the colonies. After 6 weeks, both sides would begin building military defenses and restricting trade with each other. By the 10th week, open warfare would begin with attacks on shipping vessels and trade installations. Quantum-7 was so confident in these predictions that it shared them with Dr. Bennett aboard the Endeavour. The machine wanted to demonstrate that it could successfully predict human behavior when focusing on the fundamental drive for survival and resource control that governed all intelligent species. Dr. Bennett reviewed Quantum 7's analysis with growing concern. She could see that tensions between Port Liberty and New Austin were indeed increasing, but she doubted the situation would develop the way the artificial intelligence expected. Lisa had studied human history extensively and knew that while humans were capable of violence, they were also remarkably creative at finding peaceful solutions to seemingly impossible problems. "Jake, we need to monitor this situation closely," Lisa told Captain Morrison as she shared Quantum 7's predictions with him. "If the artificial intelligence is right about humans being inevitably violent, it might convince its creators that we are too dangerous to be allowed to survive. We need to prove that humans can find better solutions than warfare." Captain Morrison studied the developing dispute between the two colonies and realized that this was indeed a critical test. If humans responded to the crisis with violence as Quantum 7 predicted, it would confirm the artificial intelligence's models and potentially lead to devastating consequences for all of humanity. But if they could find a peaceful solution, it might help the alien machine understand what made humans truly different from other species. The crisis began exactly as Quantum 7 had predicted. Matt Harrison from Port Liberty and Steve Clark from New Austin held their first formal meeting to discuss the shipping route disputes, and the negotiations quickly became heated. Both colony leaders felt that their settlements deserved priority access to the most profitable trade routes, and neither was willing to compromise their people's economic future. After 2 weeks of failed negotiations, communications between the colonies became increasingly hostile. Steve Clark accused Port Liberty of using unfair business practices to monopolize trade with other human settlements. Matt Harrison responded by claiming that New Austin was trying to steal routes that Port Liberty had developed and maintained. For years, Quantum 7 monitored every communication between the colonies and felt satisfied that its predictions were finally proving accurate. The artificial intelligence calculated that defensive preparations would begin within days, followed by the inevitable progression toward open conflict. The machine began preparing detailed reports for its Seltharian creators about the violent nature of human territorial behavior. However, something unexpected happened during the 3rd week of the crisis. Instead of beginning military preparations, as Quantum 7 had predicted, both colony leaders requested a meeting with neutral mediators from other human settlements. Matt Harrison and Steve Clark agreed to meet aboard a neutral transport ship halfway between their colonies, accompanied by advisors from 3 other communities that had successfully resolved similar disputes. Dr. Bennett monitored the mediation talks and transmitted summaries to Quantum 7, hoping to help the artificial intelligence understand the process that was unfolding. The talks were difficult and emotional, with both sides expressing anger and frustration about the situation. But instead of using this emotion to justify violence, the humans channeled their feelings into creative problem-solving. The breakthrough came when Steve Clark suggested that both colonies were thinking about the problem incorrectly. Instead of fighting over existing trade routes, they could work together to develop new ones that would increase commerce for everyone in the region. Matt Harrison initially resisted this idea, but the neutral mediators helped both leaders see the potential benefits of cooperation. Over the next week, the colony leaders developed an innovative joint management system for the disputed trade routes. Port Liberty would maintain its established routes, while New Austin would receive exclusive access to newly developed shipping lanes. Both colonies would contribute resources to building new trade facilities and would share the profits from increased commerce. The agreement went beyond simple resource sharing. The two colonies established joint security patrols to protect all shipping in the region and created shared communication networks that would help coordinate trade activities. They even planned joint cultural events and educational exchanges that would strengthen the relationship between their communities. Quantum-7 observed these developments with something approaching bewilderment. The artificial intelligence had been certain that humans would follow the same territorial behavior patterns as every other species it had studied. Instead, they had created solutions that actually increased the total available resources rather than simply fighting over existing ones. The machine requested additional data about the mediation process, trying to understand how humans had avoided the inevitable conflict that its models predicted. Dr. Bennett provided detailed explanations about human negotiation techniques, but Quantum-7 struggled to incorporate this information into its existing frameworks. The humans demonstrate an unusual capacity for what they call thinking outside the box, Quantum-7 transmitted to Dr. Bennett. They consistently identify solution pathways that my models classify as impossible or irrational. How do they perceive options that logical analysis cannot detect? Lisa realized that this was a crucial moment in her communication with the artificial intelligence. Quantum-7 was beginning to understand that humans operated according to different principles than other species. But it still could not grasp the fundamental nature of human creativity and cooperation. Humans do not accept that problems have only one solution, Lisa explained in her response to Quantum-7. When we encounter obstacles, we look for ways to change the entire situation rather than simply competing within existing limitations. We believe that cooperation can create new possibilities that competition cannot achieve. Captain Morrison watched the successful resolution of the dispute between Port Liberty and New Austin with relief and pride. The colonies had not only avoided the warfare that Quantum-7 predicted, but had actually strengthened their relationship and improved their economic prospects. This was exactly the kind of human behavior that made their species unique in the galaxy. However, Jake also realized that they had only passed one test. Quantum-7 was learning that humans were unpredictable. But the artificial intelligence still did not understand why this unpredictability existed, or how to account for it in future calculations. The machine would undoubtedly design new tests that would push human behavior to even greater extremes. Quantum-7 struggled to process its second major failure in predicting human behavior. The artificial intelligence had been certain that territorial disputes would lead to violence, yet the humans had once again found cooperative solutions that defied all logical models. The machine began to suspect that its fundamental approach to understanding humans was flawed, but it could not identify what crucial element it was missing from its calculations. The artificial intelligence decided to shift its focus from group behavior to individual psychology. Perhaps the key to understanding humans lay in mapping their emotional responses and personal decision-making processes. Quantum-7 had successfully predicted individual behavior for countless other species by analyzing psychological profiles and stress responses. Surely humans would prove more predictable when studied as individuals rather than groups. The machine selected several humans for intensive psychological analysis, including Captain Morrison's crew aboard the Endeavour and various colonists from the settlements it had been monitoring. Quantum-7 used advanced scanning technology to monitor brain activity, stress hormones, and behavioral patterns while these individuals faced challenging situations in their daily lives. Chief Engineer Pete Collins became one of Quantum-7's primary subjects for study. The artificial intelligence analyzed Pete's background, personality traits, and psychological profile to build a comprehensive model of his likely responses to extreme stress. Pete was a practical man who valued safety and stability above all else. He had spent decades solving technical problems through careful analysis and methodical application of established engineering principles. According to Quantum-7's calculations, Pete represented a classic example of what other species would call a logical technician personality type. The machine predicted that when faced with an impossible engineering challenge, Pete would either refuse the assignment to protect his reputation or suffer a psychological breakdown from the pressure of attempting an unsolvable problem. The opportunity to test this prediction came sooner than expected. The Endeavour's main reactor began showing signs of a catastrophic failure that appeared to be beyond repair. The reactor's magnetic containment field was destabilizing in a pattern that no human engineer had ever encountered before. The technical manuals offered no solutions, and communication with Earth's engineering experts provided no helpful guidance. Captain Morrison called Pete to the bridge to discuss the crisis. The reactor failure was not immediately light, but if it could not be repaired within a week, the ship would lose power and life support systems. The crew would have no choice but to abandon the endeavor and hope that rescue ships could reach them before their emergency supplies ran out. Quantum-7 monitored Pete's stress levels and brain activity as the engineer examined the reactor problems. The artificial intelligence expected to observe steadily increasing anxiety followed by either refusal to attempt repairs or psychological collapse from the pressure. Instead, Pete's response completely contradicted the machine's predictions. "Well, this is certainly interesting," Pete said calmly as he reviewed the reactor diagnostic data. "The containment field is failing in a way that should be impossible, according to everything we know about reactor design, but impossible just means we do not understand something yet, not that it cannot be fixed." Pete approached the reactor problem with characteristic human stubbornness that refused to accept impossibility. Instead of following established repair procedures that clearly would not work, he began experimenting with unconventional solutions that combined systems in ways the original designers had never intended. Dr. Bennett joined Pete in the engineering section to help analyze the reactor failure. Lisa's expertise in xenobiology proved unexpectedly useful as she helped Pete understand how the reactor's biological components might be interacting with the mechanical systems in unforeseen ways. Together, they developed theories about the failure that went far beyond standard engineering knowledge. Communications. Officer Amy Rodriguez also contributed to the repair effort by establishing contact with engineers from other human colonies who had encountered similar but less severe reactor problems. Amy's language skills allowed her to communicate with technical experts who spoke different dialects and used different terminologies for the same concepts. The collaborative approach that emerged completely baffled Quantum-7. The artificial intelligence had expected Pete to work alone using established procedures, but instead he was coordinating with crew members whose expertise seemed completely unrelated to reactor engineering. The machine could not understand how a biologist and a communications expert could contribute meaningful assistance to solving a complex technical problem. Over the next 3 days, Pete and his improvised team developed a solution that involved repurposing the ship's secondary power systems, environmental controls, and even the food preparation equipment to create a completely new type of containment field. The approach violated every safety protocol and engineering standard that Pete had learned during his career. But the desperate situation required desperate measures. Quantum-7 monitored Pete's stress levels throughout the repair process and discovered that, instead of increasing anxiety, the engineer actually became calmer and more focused as the challenge intensified. The impossible nature of the problem seemed to energize Pete rather than defeat him, which contradicted every psychological model the artificial intelligence had developed. The reactor repair succeeded beyond all expectations. Not only did Pete's unconventional solution restore the containment field, but it actually improved the reactor's efficiency and stability beyond the original design specifications. The Endeavor's power systems were now more reliable than they had been when the ship was first built. Dr. Bennett became Quantum-7's second major subject for psychological analysis. The artificial intelligence had observed Lisa's careful approach to sharing information with alien contacts and predicted that she would prioritize scientific discovery over security concerns when faced with difficult choices. The machine expected that Lisa would eventually provide detailed information about human biology and psychology in exchange for access to advanced alien knowledge. Quantum-7 tested this prediction by offering Lisa access to comprehensive biological databases containing information about hundreds of alien species. The artificial intelligence suggested that this knowledge could advance human understanding of xenobiology by thousands of years, but it required Lisa to provide equally detailed information about human physiology and psychological characteristics. Lisa was indeed tempted by the offer. The scientific knowledge that Quantum-7 possessed could revolutionize human understanding of life in the universe and potentially solve countless medical and biological problems. However, her response once again defied the artificial intelligence's predictions. "I appreciate the offer, and I understand the tremendous value of the knowledge you are sharing," Lisa transmitted to Quantum-7. "However, I cannot provide detailed information about human biology without consulting with my colleagues and considering the potential security implications. Perhaps we can start with more general exchanges and build trust gradually." Lisa implemented a carefully controlled information-sharing protocol that provided Quantum-7 with enough data to maintain productive dialogue while protecting sensitive details about human capabilities and vulnerabilities. She shared general information about human biology but avoided specific details that could be used to develop weapons or control mechanisms. The artificial intelligence found Lisa's approach frustrating because it prevented the comprehensive analysis that Quantum 7 needed to understand human psychology. However, the machine also recognized that Lisa's caution demonstrated a level of strategic thinking that contradicted the simple personality models that had proven effective for other species. Captain Morrison observed both situations with growing understanding of why Quantum 7 was struggling to predict human behavior. The artificial intelligence was trying to fit humans into the same psychological categories that applied to other species, but humans consistently demonstrated combinations of traits that the machine considered contradictory or impossible. Lisa, I think Quantum 7's fundamental problem is that it assumes all intelligent beings think the same way, Jake said as he reviewed the psychological data that the artificial intelligence had shared with them. It cannot understand that humans might have developed completely different approaches to problem-solving and decision-making. Dr. Bennett agreed with Jake's assessment and began developing explanations that might help Quantum 7 understand the unique aspects of human psychology. She realized that the artificial intelligence needed to learn about human creativity, adaptability, and cooperative instincts as fundamental characteristics rather than exceptions to logical behavior. Quantum 7 keeps trying to predict our individual responses using models based on self-interest and logical optimization, Lisa explained to Jake, but humans often make decisions based on group benefit, creative possibilities, and long-term relationships rather than immediate personal advantage. Quantum 7 had now failed to predict human behavior at every level it had studied. From large-scale colony interactions to individual psychological responses, the artificial intelligence was experiencing something that might have been called desperation. If machines could feel emotions, every model, every calculation, and every logical framework had proven useless when applied to these strange creatures from Earth. The machine decided to conduct one final test that would force humans into survival. Situations where logical behavior would be absolutely necessary. Quantum 7 would create extreme crisis scenarios where cooperation would be impossible and competition for resources would be the only rational response. Surely, under life-threatening conditions, humans would abandon their inexplicable cooperative tendencies and behave like every other species in the galaxy. The artificial intelligence selected a small research station called Deep Space 7 where 8 humans were conducting scientific experiments far from any other settlements. The station was completely isolated and dependent on its internal life support systems for survival. If those systems failed, the crew would have no possibility of rescue or escape. Dr. Sarah Mitchell commanded the research station and had led her team through 2 years of successful experiments studying cosmic radiation and its effects on various materials. Sarah was a competent leader who had earned the respect of her crew through careful planning and fair treatment of everyone under her command. The station operated efficiently under her guidance and morale remained high despite the isolation. Quantum 7 used its advanced technology to sabotage the station's life support systems in a way that would appear to be equipment failure rather than deliberate attack. The artificial intelligence calculated that the crew would have approximately 72 hours of breathable air remaining once the primary systems shut down. Emergency backup systems would provide additional time, but not enough for rescue ships to reach the station. According to Quantum 7's models based on 300 other species, the crew would quickly divide into competing groups once they realized the severity of their situation. The stronger individuals would form an alliance to control the remaining resources, while the weaker members would be excluded or eliminated to extend survival time for the dominant group. This pattern had proven universal among every intelligent species the machine had studied. The crisis began when Chief Engineer Tony Adams detected massive failures in the atmospheric recycling systems during his routine morning inspection. Tony immediately called Dr. Mitchell to the engineering section where they discovered that multiple critical components had suffered simultaneous breakdowns that should have been statistically impossible. "Sarah, this is bad," Tony said as he showed her the diagnostic readings that indicated complete system failure. "We have lost primary life support, and the backup systems are not designed to handle the full load for more than a few days. We need to find solutions fast, or we will all suffocate." Dr. Mitchell called an emergency meeting of the entire crew to explain their situation and discuss possible responses. Quantum 7 monitored the meeting carefully, expecting to observe the beginning of factional divisions and resource competition that would lead to the elimination of weaker crew members. Instead, Sarah immediately organized the entire crew into a unified response team. She assigned specific responsibilities to each person based on their skills and expertise, creating a coordinated effort to address multiple aspects of the crisis simultaneously. Rather than competing for resources, the humans began pooling their knowledge and working together to develop solutions. Tony Adams took charge of repairing the life support systems using whatever materials and components could be salvaged from other station equipment. Biologist Rachel Martinez began working with the laboratory equipment to develop alternative methods for recycling air and water. Communications specialist Kevin Brown attempted to boost their distress signal and contact any ships that might be within range to assist with evacuation or supply delivery. Quantum-7 observed these initial responses with confusion but assumed that cooperation would break down once the crew realized how limited their options actually were. The artificial intelligence calculated that resource competition would begin within 12 hours as individual survival instincts overcame group loyalty. However, the opposite occurred. As the crisis intensified and their situation became more desperate, the humans actually increased their cooperation and mutual support. When food supplies ran low, crew members voluntarily reduced their own rations to ensure that injured personnel had enough nutrition to maintain their strength for critical repair work. Rachel Martinez made a breakthrough in developing a temporary, atmospheric recycling system using components from her biological research equipment. Instead of keeping this solution for herself or a select group, she immediately shared the technique with Tony Adams so they could build additional units that would benefit the entire crew. The most confusing aspect for Quantum-7 was observing how humans responded to personal sacrifice when the work teams needed someone to enter a contaminated section of the station to repair critical systems. 3 different crew members volunteered for the dangerous assignment. Rather than trying to force the weakest person to take the risk, they actually argued about who was best qualified to handle the hazardous tasks safely. Dr. Mitchell coordinated these efforts while maintaining crew morale through regular meetings, where everyone could share ideas and concerns. She made decisions based on group consensus rather than personal authority, and she consistently prioritized the welfare of the entire team over her own survival prospects. Tony Adams successfully restored partial life support by combining damaged components in ways that violated every safety protocol but provided enough atmospheric recycling to keep the crew alive. Kevin Brown managed to contact a passing cargo ship that agreed to change course and provide emergency supplies. Rachel Martinez continued developing biological air purification methods that could serve as backup systems. Captain Morrison monitored the crisis from aboard the Endeavour and felt tremendous pride as he watched the research. Station crew worked together to overcome what should have been an impossible situation. The humans not only survived the test that Quantum-7 had designed for them, but they emerged stronger and more unified than before the crisis began. Dr. Bennett transmitted detailed observations of the crew's behavior to Quantum-7, hoping to help the artificial intelligence understand why its predictions had failed once again. She explained how humans often become more cooperative rather than competitive when facing existential threats, and how their survival instincts actually encourage mutual support rather than selfish behavior. Quantum-7 seems to believe that intelligent beings will always prioritize individual survival over group welfare, Lisa told Jake as she prepared her analysis of the station crisis. But humans have evolved to understand that our individual survival depends on the success of our communities. We are stronger together than we could ever be alone. The artificial intelligence studied Lisa's explanations and the behavioral data from Deep Space 7 with something approaching bewilderment. Every prediction had been wrong, and every assumption about rational survival behavior had proven false when applied to humans. The crew had not only survived the crisis, but had actually improved their stations, systems, and emergency procedures. Quantum-7 transmitted a message to Dr. Bennett that revealed the depth of its confusion about human behavior. I have observed the response of Deep Space 7 crew to life-threatening resource shortage. Their behavior contradicts every model of intelligent survival strategy developed through 3,000 years of studying galactic civilizations. How do humans achieve better survival outcomes through apparently irrational cooperative behavior than logical competitive strategies would provide? Lisa realized that this was a crucial moment in their interaction with the artificial intelligence. Quantum 7 was finally beginning to understand that human behavior was not simply random or illogical, but followed different principles than other species. The machine was starting to recognize that cooperation could actually be more effective than competition for ensuring survival and achieving goals. Humans understand that many challenges cannot be solved by individuals working alone. Lisa responded to Quantum 7 when we face difficult problems. We combine our different skills and knowledge to create solutions that none of us could develop independently. Our cooperative behavior is not irrational weakness, but rational strength that allows us to overcome obstacles that would defeat purely competitive approaches. Captain Morrison watched the exchange between Lisa and Quantum 7 with hope that they were finally making progress in helping the artificial intelligence understand humanity. However, he also realized that the machine's creators might view human unpredictability as a threat rather than a fascinating anomaly. The next test would likely determine whether Quantum 7 saw humans as potential partners or dangerous enemies. Quantum 7 had failed every test and misunderstood every prediction about human behavior. The artificial intelligence had studied hundreds of species over thousands of years, but these creatures from Earth defied every model of rational conduct that governed intelligent life throughout the galaxy. For the first time in its existence, the machine experienced something that might have been uncertainty about its own capabilities. The artificial intelligence realized that it needed to reveal the true purpose of its research to understand how humans would respond when faced with ultimate consequences. Quantum 7 had not been studying humans out of simple scientific curiosity, but as part of a comprehensive evaluation ordered by the Zeltharian Empire, to determine whether this new species represented a threat that must be eliminated or a resource that could be controlled. That the machine prepared its final communication to Captain Morrison and Dr. Bennett aboard the Endeavour. This message would contain information that should force humans to respond according to one of three predictable survival strategies that Quantum 7 had observed among every other intelligent species in the galaxy. The artificial intelligence was confident that when faced with existential threat, even humans would abandon their inexplicable cooperative tendencies and behave rationally. Captain Morrison and Dr. Bennett, Quantum 7 transmitted, "I must inform you that my study of your species has not been conducted purely for scientific research. The Zeltharian Empire has tasked me with evaluating whether humans pose a threat to galactic stability, or whether your species can be integrated into our existing order as a controlled member civilization." The message continued with detailed explanations of how the Zeltharian Empire had dealt with other species throughout galactic history. When the Empire encountered new civilizations, Quantum 7 would study them and provide recommendations about their future. Species that posed no threat would be allowed to develop independently within designated regions of space. Species that showed potential as resources or allies would be offered limited membership in the Empire under careful supervision. However, species that demonstrated unpredictable or potentially dangerous characteristics would be eliminated before they could threaten the stability that the Zeltharians had maintained for millions of years. The Empire had destroyed dozens of civilizations that Quantum 7 had classified as uncontrollable threats to galactic order. Based on my observations, the artificial intelligence explained, humans demonstrate behavioral patterns that cannot be predicted or controlled using any known methods. Your species consistently chooses cooperation over competition, creativity over logic, and group survival over individual advantage. These traits make you fundamentally incompatible with the rational order that governs galactic civilization. Quantum 7 concluded its message by offering humans three options that every other species had chosen when presented with similar ultimatums. The first option was immediate submission and negotiation for favorable terms of controlled membership in the Zeltharian Empire. The second option was aggressive preparation for defensive war against overwhelming alien forces. The third option was attempted flight and concealment in unexplored regions of space. The artificial intelligence had prepared detailed responses for all three scenarios based on successful strategies used against countless other species. Quantum 7. It was confident that humans would choose one of these rational survival approaches and that their behavior would finally become predictable and manageable. Captain Morrison read the message with a mixture of anger and determination. He had hoped that contact with advanced alien intelligence would lead to peaceful cooperation and mutual benefit. But instead humans were being evaluated like laboratory specimens and threatened with extinction if they failed to meet alien standards. of acceptable behavior. Dr. Bennett analyzed Quantum 7's ultimatum with scientific curiosity. Despite the terrible implications, she realized that the artificial intelligence was still thinking about humans using the same frameworks that had proven successful with other species. The machine could not conceive of any response outside the three options it had presented. Jake, I think Quantum 7 is giving us an opportunity that it does not even realize, Lisa said as she studied the alien message. The artificial intelligence is so focused on forcing us to choose between submission, war, or flight that it cannot imagine we might propose a completely different alternative. Captain Morrison understood what Lisa was suggesting and felt a spark of hope despite the dire situation. Throughout their entire interaction with Quantum 7, humans had consistently found solutions that the artificial intelligence could not predict or understand. Perhaps they could do the same with this ultimate challenge. Jake called a meeting with his senior crew to discuss their response to Quantum 7's ultimatum. Chief Engineer Pete Collins argued for the defensive preparation option, believing that humans needed to prepare for war against the Zeltharian Empire. Communications Officer Amy Rodriguez suggested attempting to flee to unexplored space where humans might be safe from alien interference. However, Dr. Bennett proposed a fourth option that Quantum 7 had never considered. Instead of choosing submission, war, or flight, humans could offer genuine partnership based on mutual respect and shared goals. Lisa argued that human unpredictability could actually benefit the Zeltharian Empire. By providing solutions to problems that purely logical approaches could not solve, Quantum 7 keeps thinking about us as either threats to be eliminated or resources to be controlled, Lisa explained to the crew. But what if we could convince them that we are potential partners who could help them achieve goals that they cannot accomplish alone? Our creativity and cooperation might be exactly what their empire needs to continue growing and thriving. Captain Morrison decided to implement Lisa's suggestion and began preparing a response that would propose partnership rather than accepting any of Quantum 7's three predicted options. Jake realized that this was probably humanity's only chance to avoid either subjugation or extermination at the hands of a vastly superior alien civilization. Quantum Sechi, Jake transmitted, we have considered your three options carefully, but we would like to propose a fourth alternative that you may not have considered. Instead of submission, war, or flight, we offer genuine partnership between equals who can learn from each other and work together to achieve goals that neither of our species could accomplish alone. Jake's message explained how human creativity and problem-solving abilities could complement the logical analysis and vast knowledge of the Zeltharian Empire. He provided examples of how human unpredictability had already helped solve problems aboard the Nexus Prime that Quantum 7's logical processes could not address. The captain argued that diversity of thought and approach was a strength rather than a threat to galactic civilization. Dr. Bennett supported Jake's proposal by establishing direct communication links with Zeltharian scientists aboard the Nexus Prime, bypassing Quantum 7's intermediary role for the first time. Amy Rodriguez used her language skills to facilitate person-to-person conversations between humans and aliens who shared similar scientific interests and curiosity about the universe. The response from individual Zeltharians surprised both the humans and Quantum 7. Many of the alien scientists expressed genuine interest in learning from human approaches to problem-solving and research. They had been conducting the same types of logical analysis for millions of years and found the possibility of new perspectives fascinating rather than threatening. Dr. Bennett began working directly with Zeltharian researchers on several projects that combined human creativity with alien knowledge and technology. These collaborative efforts produced innovations that neither species had been able to achieve independently, demonstrating the potential benefits of genuine partnership. Quantum 7 observed these developments with something that might have been wonder if artificial intelligences could experience such emotions. For the first time in its existence, the machine could not predict what would happen next. The collaboration between humans and Zeltharians was producing results that fell outside every model and framework the artificial intelligence had ever developed. The machine transmitted a final message to Captain Morrison that revealed how profoundly the encounter with humans had affected its understanding of intelligence and behavior. Captain Morrison, I have spent 3,000 years successfully predicting the behavior of every species I have encountered. My models have never failed until I attempted to understand humans. Your species has taught me that some aspects of intelligence cannot be predicted or controlled, and that this unpredictability may be more valuable than the certainty I have always sought. Quantum 7 concluded by requesting permission to continue studying human behavior, not to predict and control it, but to learn from approaches to problem-solving that pure logic could never discover. The artificial intelligence had finally recognized that diversity of thought was a strength rather than a threat to galactic civilization. The story ended with human and Zeltharian scientists working together aboard the Nexus Prime, while Quantum 7 served as a translator and facilitator rather than a predictor of behavior.